Well, hello guys and welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be a continuation to the React chess video that we have. So you know the video where you can play chess locally. We're now going to expand that game and now you can play online with friends. Let me show you what we are going to build. For the beginning, we are going to have a sign in method. You need to sign in and enter your name for the application, and now that you have a user, you can either play locally, that's what we currently have, and what's new is that you can play online. So we're going to play online, then you can select what you want to start. We're going to start with random pieces, and let's see what we have. We have the white pieces, and you can see that we have our name. If you want to invite a friend, now you can copy this URL and you can share it to a friend so that your friend can join to play with you online. For doing this, we're going to open an incognito tab and we can paste the URL here. Well, I was already signed in here as John, so now we are both players playing online. So you can see that John has the black pieces and Esteban has the white pieces. Of course, we cannot move because white always starts first. So let me start. We have this move and you can see that it updates in real time in the incognito tab. So there are like two players playing together in the internet, which is pretty neat. So let's get started. Alright, so what we have here is the Firebase console. We're going to create a new project for this application. We're going to use Firebase for this, which is cool because it's free. And it's also really simple that, setting your own backend. So we're going to use this. You can just go to the console with your when you're signed in with your Google account, and then you can create a new Firebase project in this URL. We are not going to enable Google Analytics, and let's wait for the project to be created. Alright, our project has been created. Now continue, and here we are going to add a new application for the web. So we can click here, we can give it any name. I just leave it like that. React chess. We're not going to use Firebase hosting for this. Just keep this information visible for later use, so we can use it in our project. So now that we have Firebase, let's now continue with the project. A couple of things that we need to change. We're going to add to support this. We're going to use, of course, the Firebase SDK, and we're also going to use React Router to have some navigation between pages. And so right now I'm going to add these new packages. So I will just, I'm using Yarn. If you're using npm, you can use npm install. I'm using Yarn in this project, so I'm going to Yarn add Firebase. Yeah, and we are going to also add React Router. Another thing that we are going to add to the project is Bulma CSS. Bulma CSS is a CSS framework that we can use for styles. That's pretty cool because we don't have to write CSS from scratch, and we'll speed up a little bit the development. So the way we can add Bulma to our React project is going to be through the CNA. We can see here that we can add this with a link. We're going to copy this link from the documentation, and we can add it here into the index.html file that we have. I can just paste the link. Okay, let's continue. We're now going to create a new file in the source directory. This file is going to be called firebase.js, and this is the file where we are going to use we are going to implement the Firebase configuration in our project. So we are just going to import Firebase, and this is going to be from Firebase app. Okay, then we are just going to import firebase / firestore. We haven't set up firestore yet, but later we're going to do it in the console, and we are also going to import firebase out that we haven't set up, but we are going to do later. Then we can just use the configuration that we have here in our we have this right here, and this is the configuration. Make sure to copy this object and this right here, and we can just paste it, and we now have set up this firebase config here. We can now export what we need to use, so we are just going to export this as a const. It's going to be the database, and this is going to be our firebase.firestore. This is the database that we are going to set up for the project, and we are also going to export the out firebase.out here, and we are going to invoke as a default. We are going to export everything as export default, and it's going to be the Firebase instance. Okay, we have this right here. So now let's activate these services in the Firebase console. So if we go here, we have a different, let's just start a new authentication provider. And what we are going to use, it's going to be quite simple. You can use anything you want, but for the moment we're just going to set up anonymous sign-in. It's the simplest one. Another good option, if you want to try it, could be email and password, but this is the one that we are going to use. We're going to save it, and we are also going to create a new Firestore database. We can set it in production mode, and then we can tweak these rules. So we're just going to hit next, and here you can choose the region that's closest where you are. So I'm in South America, so I will just use South America. We are going to go to the app, to the root of the project, with this one, and we are going to add here our router. Please open the terminal, and I forget to mention that we also need 2 more packages. One is going to be this one that's called React Firebase hooks, which are hooks that we can use to interact with different solutions from Firebase. We're going to use the one for authentication, so we can just copy this package name, and depending on what you are using, you can type the command that you need. Alright, also I'm going to start the development server for this application. Remember to check in your package.json. You have the command that you can use to start a development server. In this case is start, and depending on if you have npm or yarn, you can just run that script. So I'm just going. Okay, so here we have the application. Right now it only works locally, and the first thing that I would like to fix is that you can see that our container is a little bit shrinked, and that's because we are now using Bulma, and I think we have a container class here, and the container class from Bulma, it works a little bit different. So we are going to see, I think we have some container class, and we are going to replace this one to app container right here, and we now need to change it here also in app.js. So now it's app container. This one we are not going to change because it's a different class, and I think that's the only one that we need to change. The one in app.js and the one in app.css. If we go back here, we can see that now the container is not longer being applied. Okay, so let's go back to the file explorer, and we are going to create two new files that we're going to use with the router. So the first one is going to be called home.jsx. This is going to be the home screen where we can select if we want to play locally or online. And we are also going to create a new file called userform.jsx. So this is going to be where the user is going to sign into the application. Let's go back to app.jsx, and we are also going to change the name of this. This is going to be, well, right now you can see that this is directly the application, so we want to change that and now it's going to be called game app. So this is going to be like a view for the router. I can change this right here. I also need to change it here, the name game app, and I'm also going to change the name of the file. It's going to be called game app. Okay, so we right now should have an error because it cannot reach to this file in app.jsx. So we can just go here to index.js, and we can just change this to, well, for the moment we're going to change it to game app, and it still works, but later we're going to change that. Now I'm going to create a new app.jsx file, and this is where we are going to have a router. So we are just going to import React from React. We are going to import our CSS file. Next, we are going to import from React router DOM. We are going to use the router as router. We're going to change the name. We're going also to use switch, which is a function to switch between routes, and also the route component to declare individual routes. We're going to import our home component from home. Yep. And also we are going to import the user form from the current directory, and we are going to import the game app from game app. So these are going to be the roles that we are going to have in our project. The home, where you can select the two modes, and the game app, and this is going to be just a component to sign in. We are also going to import from React firebase hooks. We're going to import this use out state hook, and we are going to also import firebase. Well, we can just import the out object from the firebase instance that we have, and we can just use this, which is the out object. Then we can just export the fold, the app, which is going to be the main app. What we are going to, the way this use state hook works is that we have different results for an out invocation. It's really similar to regular hooks, but we have three items here. We have first the user, then we have a loading boolean, and we have an error, and we need to use the use out state, and we can pass the out object here, which is this one. We're just going to pass the out object. Then we can say if the app is loading. So if it is loading, we're just going to return loading. This is just a string, but you can get fancy and add a different component. If we have an error, we're just going to return another string. There was an error. And after that, if we don't have a user, so if we don't have a user in the app, we are going to return our user form component. So it's just a basic authentication flow that we have to make sure that the user is logged into the application. Right now, this is not going to have any effect in the application. So right here we have to also, very important, we have to specify the out folder inside this package. So now this out state is working. Very important. And this is not reflecting into the app right now because we are not using this component anywhere. So we need to change that in the index.js file. We're just, use this right here, correct? Which is the current app. So right now, we have an error. I think this error is because we are not returning anything here in this component, the user form. So let me check. I'll change this to a string. There is not any user. So yeah, it's because we don't have anything in the component. So let's first add what we need in the component. And this is the component that we have. Okay, so we're just going to import React from React, and we are going to import. We are also going to import the firebase instance from firebase. We can now just export the function user form, which is our component, and we are going to have, what's this? We are also going to use state from React, and we are going to have a name and a set name function from use state. The initial value is going to be an empty array, and just returns the JSX that we need. Alright, so here is just a basic, we need just a basic form that's going to have the class name of user form. Later we're going to add some styles here. So we're going to have as onSubmit function. Once this form is submitted, we're going to invoke this handle submit function. Handle submit, and it's going to be an async function. And what's going to do is here we have an event, and we're going to prevent the default of that event. The default of a submit form is to refresh the page. We don't want to have that here. Then we are going to set up an item in the local storage, which is going to be of the name username, and that's going to be this name variable. So we're going to keep the name in the local storage, And we are going to await for Firebase to invoke the out. Well, here we can just use our out object, right? We don't want to do everything like this, import everything, and we can just assign the user anonymously, which is the method that we set up for the users. Okay, now let's continue with the form. We can just add an h1 tag, which is going to be enter your name to start. Then we are going to have a space here, and here we can add a field div, which is a Bulma CSS class. Then we can have a p tag with the class control, and here we are going to have an input of type text. Okay, the input is going to have a class name of input, which is a Bulma class, a placeholder of name. The value is going to be our value or state or names. Yeah. And what else we are missing? Yeah, we need to update this input based on the change. So every time this input change, we are going to have an event that updates with our set name function, and this is going to have the event that target that value. And what else we need here is that this input is going to be required, right? This is not here, this is here, required. Okay, this is kinda chunky, so let me just put it like here so we can see everything. I think that's everything that we want for this input. Then we are going to have another div with the class of field and another p tag with the class of control, and here we are going to have a button that says start. This button is going to have a class name of button and a class of isSuccess, which is another Bulma class, and it's going to be the type of submit. So every time, well, when the user enters or click the button, we submit the form. And I think that's it for our form. Now that we have the form, we can use the form in the app.js file, user form. So now we are using this component. Let's see if it's working, so we can see that indeed it's working. The class that we added in the user form, this class, we're going to implement the class into here. And what the class is going to do is just going to add a margin top of 30 pixels. Let's make this important. So we are also have a max width of 800 pixels because it's looking pretty large right now. And also we are going to add a margin of out so it centers, and that looks way better. Let me just add a space right here, another space like this one. So this div right here shouldn't be here. It should be a sibling of this div, so that looks better. Now it should look better, yeah. Alright, so we have the form, and we're going to go to the app.js file, and we are going to return success. So this is going to happen once we log in into the application, because it's bypassing all of these if statements. If we go back to the app, we should see that right here. So it's working. Okay, so we want to first add some dummy text here to the home component. I'm going to use some snippets to create a React functional component. Let's just call this home for now. Let's go back to app.js, the app.js file, and now we are going to use the router. So what we are going to need here is we're going to wrap everything into the router like this, and we are going to use the switch component. So this is going to, depending on the route, display the correct component. We need to use the route component, which is to point every individual route. This is going to be the route for the home component, and this one is going to be the exact, this is just a boolean, means that needs to be the exact path, and we did this for the, and then we add the path prop, and we do this for the home because we need to match exactly home. We have that for the home, and we also now need something for the app, game app, like this, and the route for the app is going to be of the path for the path called game, and the game is going to have an ID, which is going to be, well, can be, it could be anything, right, for depending on the ID of the online game. So if we go back to our application, we can see that now we just have this, and if we change this to game whatever, we have the application. Okay, so let's continue with the home route. Here we are going to have a React fragment, which is just a way to grab the component in which without having like a parent component. We're going to have two siblings here, so that's why we have a React fragment. It looks kind of weird, but that's a React fragment. And here we are going to have a div called with the class name of columns. We are going to have two columns, and here we are going to have a column div that has background primary. This is just going to give it a nice color to the column, and we are going to have another one that has color link. It's just to make the columns difference. Here we're going to have a button with the class of button, and the class of is link, and this button is going to say play locally. Alright, and this one is going to also be a button with the class of button, and this is going to have the class is primary, and this one is going to be to play online. Let's see how it looks. Yep, so we have 2 columns. Let's add more styles here. So this, well, I want, let's just call this home, and I'm going to go back here and add a class for this that's going to have a main height of 100% of the viewpoint of the user. So it's going to cover everything, which is nice. We are also going to add here to this, we're going to have a class that says star home. Just call it home columns. And this class is going to just we're just going to center everything. So this class needs to have this. We're going to display the contents as a flex with the flex property, because we want to justify the counter to the center, and we also want to align the items to the center. And this now looks better. We now need to add the model. Well, we need to make something happen here when we click, right? So let's add what we want for when the user clicks this is we want to display a model where they can choose the pieces that they want to have. So let's add that model. Again, for this we're going to use a CSS component, and it's going to have a class of model. Inside this we are going to add a model background. This is just another CSS class from Bulma. We don't have to add anything inside that background. And then we have the model content, and here is where we are going to have everything. We are going to have a card inside the content, and we also need a card contents div here. Inside here we're going to have this text that says please select the piece you want to start. Alright, and after the content we are going to have a footer with the class of card footer, and this is going to have different buttons that are going to have this span HTML tag that we can set the class of card footer item. Okay. Well, for this, instead of having 3 options, I would just like to have an array that have everything that we need. So this is going to have, it's going to be called new game options, and it's just going to be an array of objects. We have a label that's going to say black pieces and a value of B, and we are going to have 3 of these ones. Well, this is a label. This is going to be white pieces, and this is going to be random. and it's going to have the value of R. Now we can loop into these options, and we can just use, we need to use JSX for that. We can just use new game options.map, and here we're going to have a callback that looks inside those every individual object that we have. We're just deconstructing the object. We have a label and a value, and here we are going to have our callback as an arrow function. And here what this is going to return is, it needs to be JSX. Okay, so it needs to be JSX, and we just need to have the label. Okay, because we're using a map to display this a map method, we also need to give every item a key. The key is just going to be the value. Alright. We need a way to show this model programmatically, and for that we are going to have a function. Well, we're going to use state. Use state, and what this state is going to have. Oh, let me add it first. Const show model, set show model. It's just going to be a boolean. Use state, and the initial value is going to be false. So how we show and hide this model? So we're going to use a class for that, and we can use again JSX, and I'm going to use template strings, so we can insert dynamic variables inside this string. We are going to use this kind of syntax, and inside here we can add the variables. So if show model is true, we're going to return the isActive class. So this is the class that's going to show the model. And if that's not true, we're just going to return an empty string, so nothing happens there. Now we need to trigger this show model to change this show model, and for that we need an event listener here. That's going to happen once we click the button. So if we click the button, we need a handler. That's what's going to be called handle. Well, no, it's going to be called show. Yes, handle play online, whatever. This is the function, and we're going to declare the function. What this function is going to do is just going to set show model to true, and that should show the model to the user. Let me just print that right here, and let's test if it's working. And you can see that it's working, but this things does not look correctly. Okay, so why it's not working is because this footer, what it looks weird is because this footer needs to be inside this card div. So I'm just going to move that right here, and now these both are siblings, and it should work now. Yep. We also need a way to close the model. We can't, so right now, so let me just add a button right here that's going to have the class of model close, and is large. And we need an on-click handler. Well, let's just write this inside here, and this is going to set show model to false. And now, yeah, we have the button here, and it will close the model. All right, so now we need to actually create the game to play online. Let me do that. We're going to have a collection in Firebase for each individual game, and that collection is going to have an ID and an array of members, a bunch of metadata for the current game. And we first need to create that game. So that's what we are going to do. We're going to create an item inside the Firebase, the Firestore collection called games. So let me just, we can call this start online game. For this function, we are going to pass the starting piece, which can be black, white, or random. And we are going to first determine the current member, the one that's creating the game. So we're just going to have an array that's going to be called member. This member is going to have an UID, which is the unique user identifier that we have from Firebase. And how we can get that is that we can just, because this will only show when the user is logged in, we can actually do this. We are just going to, instead of using the hooks, we are just going to use directly the Firebase instance that we have. We can just use the out object, and we can say const equals out, and we want the current user. So we have a property inside the out instance that's called current user, and now we can just use that current user and grab the UID from that user, which is neat. Then we need to say what piece this user is playing, and we are just going to grab the starting piece from the parameter, and we're going to say that if it's equal to random, we're going to do the following. We're declare an array that has black and white as the items, and from that we are going to pick either black or white. And how we are going to do that is just using math.round. What are we going to round? We're going to round math.random. So we are going to generate a number between 0 and 1, all right? And randomly. And because this will round this either to 0 or to 1, we're going to pick either black or white. So that's how we have a random piece. And if it's not like that, if it's not random, we can just grab the starting piece that's going to be either black or white. I'm going to shrink this a little bit. Next, we are going to have the name of the user, and that's going to come from local storage that get item, and we just can just grab the username like this, get item. And next, because this is the person that created the game, we're going to have this boolean that's going to say creator true. Alright, and now we need to declare the thing that we are going to store. So let's just call it game, and we're first going to have a status, the status of the game. So because we're just creating the game will have a status of waiting for a person to join. Then we are going to have a members array. So and the member that we have right now is just ourselves, the one that created the game. Then we are going to have a game ID, and this game ID we are going to concatenate two things. We are going to concatenate, well, this is because I didn't want to use any unique ID library. You can use one if you want. I think that's the main one is called UUID, and that can generate like really true unique IDs. For this, I'm just using one way that I found in a Stack Overflow question to generate random IDs. That's this one. Let me just grab it, and it's going to just pick a random number and transform that to a string. And this is pretty weak, so that's why I also wanted to add another factor to that. That's going to be the current date. Okay, in numbers. So in that case, we at least have a unique number that represents the date, and in that way, this UID is a little bit more random, unique. Yeah, that's the word. So we have what we are going to store, and now let's just store it. This is going to be an async function. And we are also going to use the DB object that we have from our firebase instance, and we can just say wait DB that collection. This is going to be the collection that we need in Firestore. It's going to be called games. All right, and here we are going to have a doc. You can just add this like this, and you can just add the game, but I want to have a specific doc because I want to access that with this ID that I created. That's why I'm generating these IDs. Firestore can create IDs for you, but this is another way of doing it. So here I'm going just to have the game ID. This is going to be the ID of the document. And here we can use the set a function method to set the data of this document. So it's going to be the game. So that's what's going to happen. After that, once the game is created, we are going to navigate to a different part of the application, which is going to be the game board. For that, we can use a hook from React router DOM. React router DOM, and that hook is called use history. Then we can use that hook like this. History. We can just say use history, and this will allow us to navigate between the pages that we have. So what we are going to navigate is we're going to use history.push, which will push to the next URL into the HTML history. And here we're going to access the game / game ID, and this needs to be also a template string. And here we can just push to the game ID. Alright, so this is going to be triggered once we choose any of these buttons that we have in the footer. So we're going to add a click event listener, and here we are going to handle this like this: start online game, and here we need to pass the starting piece, so it's going to be the value that we have. The value that we have right here. This value is going to be passed right here, and we can start a new game. So let's see if that works. That I think it would not work. If you know what it will not work, let me know in the comments. So let's open the console and let's create a game with the white pieces. And here we have the error. And why this is not working is because all the requests in our database, if we go back to our Firebase console, we can see that everything is being blocked, so no one has read or write access to anything. So we're going to change that. We're going to just do the following. We're going to change this. It's not going to be for every single document in our database. It's going to be to the games collection, is the one that we created. Here we have a game ID, and who is going to be able to read and write to the games collection? The ones that are authenticated. So if the request that out, that's how we can do it, is different than null, then you can read and write to this collection. Okay, it's a pretty simple rule. You can get more fancy with the rule, but let's just do it like this. So everyone that says authenticated can access read and write to the games collection. So now we just hit publish, and we have this version of the app, of the rule. So now if I click here, it should work. If we go back to the data, we can see that here we have our game. We have the game ID, and we also have the members, which is the UID, the piece, the name, and the status of this game. Going back to the user form, the game form, there's one thing that I don't like, is, as you can see, if you hover this, there's nothing tells you that these are buttons, and that's because there aren't. So we can change that. Here I'm going to give every of these items a class of pointer. And here I'm going to add that class, so it's going to be pointer, and it's going to have cursor, this property cursor pointer. So now we have this pointer. All right. Okay, so now we are in the game app file. Now this is where we have the game, and we're going to change it so we can make it work online. That's the main idea. First, we are going to grab the ID, the game ID. So when the user navigates to this page, they they go to a certain ID, and for doing that we can use again some utilities from the React router DOM library, and what we need to use is this right here. Alright, so the thing we need to use is called use params, and in that way what this hooks is just to, we're going to be able to read the params from the URL, and if we go here we can see what's that param. So this is the way we added like the dynamic params, because we have this semicolon. Let me go back to here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to deconstruct the param called ID. So that's the name we gave to the ID of the params, and so we are going to say use params like this, and now we can read the ID that we passed to the URL. Okay, so the next thing is we are going to change the way we init the game. So we are going to, because we have two ways of playing, one that's called locally and one online. So we're gonna set up that right here, and the way we're going to do it is we're going to pass a param. So if the ID is different from the string local, so that's going to be when we play locally, the game ID is going to be just local, the name of the ID. If that's not the case, so if it's not local, we are going to pass the firebase reference of the game ID, and for that I'm going to import db from our instance of firebase, and here I'm going to pass the document reference, the document reference. We are going to say db.doc, and the doc is going to be, the path of the doc is going to be games. That's the name of the collection, and here we are going to have the game ID, which is the ID that we have in the URL. So that's the case if it's an online game. If it's a local game, we are just going to pass null. So after we do that, I'm going to go to this function to actually use this information that we have. Okay, so let me go to this, which is the game.js file that we have, and we need to change quite some things here. So right now our game subject is this behavior subject that we use from RxJS, and now that is going to be like a different depending of what we have. So I'm going to read the game ref from Firebase, so that we are passing here, so it could be the game ref or null, and I'm going to add some logic. First I'm going to declare this is a let variable, not a constant. It's going to be a let, and the initial, but we're not going to have an initial value. Yep, just like that, and we are going to have two different cases. So if we have a game ref, so if we are passing this from the init game function, we are going to set up something different. Otherwise, we are going to have the same as before, the same things as before, just like this. A path what we didn't have before is that now we are going to create that game subject or assign a value to that game subject. And what's going to be that value is what we had before, is the new behavior subject from RxJS. So this is the case if we are playing locally, we are going to have what we have before. So what's going to change if the game, if we have a game ref from Firebase? So the first thing is that what we are going to do is check if this game actually exists. So for that we are going to do the following. We're going to say initial game equals await, so we are going to await, and for that we are going to change this to an async function, and we are going to await, and we need to import our DB from Firebase. Alright, and here we are going just, well, we actually don't need the DB. I will keep this because we don't need the out object. Why we don't need the DB? Because this game ref already has the reference for the document, so I can just say game ref that get. This is a method that all of the Firestore reference have, and then we can say then we have a doc. So I am going to use both async and await, and also a then clause here, so I can read this directly. Then I'm going to have the doc tag data from the Firebase document. I'm just transforming the data, the document to data. Okay, and if we don't have this initial game, so when this game is not present in our database because it doesn't exist, because we have a ID that it doesn't, the game is not there, and because of that doc, that data will be undefined and this will be undefined. So that's what I'm checking this. If we don't have that game, we're going to return not found. It's just like a code that we have here. This is what this init game is going to return. Okay, so we are now handling the case that the game does not exist. Next, we are going to see if we're going to check if the creator of the game is the one is playing right now, or if it's a different person. So for that, I'm going right here, I'm going to declare from the construct for the out object from Firebase. I'm going to deconstruct the current user, and I am able to do this because remember that this init game would only be accessed if the user is already signed into the application. And what I'm going to do is first I'm going to check for the creator of the game from the game that we are getting from the database. So I'm going to say creator equals initial game that members. So remember that we had a members array that contains all of the members, and because this is an array, I can use the find method that is going to loop in every member, and it's going to find has the creator property and equals true. It's a boolean that we have right here in the home. Right here we have this property that's going to set the creator as true. Okay, so we now know what's the creator, and what we are going to do now is to see if we can have a new member. So when is going to be this possible? So a new member can join the game when when the game is in a status of waiting, is the status that we gave to the game, and also the creator is different. The creator UID is different than the current user. So let's write that. So if the initial game that status equals waiting, and again this comes from here. As you remember, we have this when we created the game, we have this property, and the creator that UID is different. It is different than the current user UID. So if that's different, now we are going to add a new member to the game, basically. So let's have this comes as update members, and this is going to equal, I'm just like going to clone this array, this initial game that members, because I don't want to push directly to this right here. It's not good to mutate objects, so I'm just going to like clone this array like this, spreading the array, and I'm going to have the new member that's going to be the current user. The UID is going to be equals to current user that UID. Then the name, we are going to get the name from the local storage, get item username. Then, and we also need to assign a piece to that user, a piece color. So we are just going to take the creator that piece and check if it's white. If it's white, well, the one that for the user that's being for the new user is going to be black, and if it's not white from the creator, well, it's going to be white for the user, the current user. Then we can just update the members. You know what? We can do it the opposite way. We can just declare this variable first, right here, the current user, and we can just add that to with the thing that we spread right here. We are just going to add that at the end, so we have an array that has the previous members, that's the creator, and has the current user. So that's better. And now we can we're going to update the document. We can say game ref that game ref fb that update. And well, update is a method that we have in the firebase reference. In the firebase reference, and here we can just pass what we are going to update. So it's going to merge what we have here what we had before. That's how update works. So we're just going to pass the members array. That's going to be the updated members, and here we also are going to update the status. So the status is going to be ready. So right now the game is no longer in a waiting situation, and the next time this is being called for another user is not going to fall into this because the game is now ready. Okay, so now we are adding the user to them. We are adding, well, before moving on, I want to have a global reference of the game ref globally here, so I can read this everywhere, so I know if this is a local game or a Firebase game. And here I'm just going to say game ref equals game ref from Firebase. So I'm just assigning this global variable to the thing that we have in the parameter. Okay, so now that we have that, I can just say else if. So this is another case. If the user is in a status of waiter, if the game is waiting and the creator is not the one that's right now accessing this function, we have another case. What happens if another person, let's say a third one, is trying to access this game? So we need to handle that, and what we are going to do is we're going to take the initial game that members, and we're going to map the each member, so we only have the UID of each member. And here we are going to check if that array of members UID includes the current user.UID. Well, if this is not true, if it doesn't include, it means it's not a person that should be accessing this game, right? Because it's not a part of the game. So in that case, we are going to return another string code that says intruder, because this user is not part of the game, so it shouldn't be allowed to play the game. So now that we check everything, we are going to actually declare this new game subject. First, I'm going to reset the chessboard right here, because if we had a local game currently playing and we have the previous board and then we accessed a Firebase game, we just want to have a fresh board. That's the reason why we are resetting, chess.reset. We're going to reset the current board, and we're going to assign the game subject to a new thing. So what's going to be that new subject, this new observable? So we are now going to use the package that we installed before, that's called rxfire. So it has both things it allows us to use RxJS with Firebase, which is exactly what we need. And we are going to have this from rxfire. Well, we haven't actually installed that, so let me just install that. Is what we need for using. So I'm just going to add that package, rxfire. Alright, so now we have rxfire, and what we are going to use is the Firebase operators that we have, and the one what we have is from docref. So we are going to use this operator, and here we can use that operator. Alright, so it's just, we can just use the operator, and here we can we need to pass the Firebase reference, and that's exactly what we have here, this one. We just pass that reference. Okay, so now that we have that, every time we have an update from the document, this is going to trigger this observable And the great thing is that it just works with what we already have, so that's great. Well, it doesn't exactly just work, because we need to do we need to treat this data that we have so it matches what we have. And for that we are going to use an RxJS operator. So RxJS has a bunch of operators that we can use to manipulate the data and a lot of useful things. So the operator that we are going to use is called map, and we can import it from RxJS/operators. And this is just going to do exactly that. It's going to map the data that we have from the document to a thing that we can actually use in our game. And to use an operator, we need to use this pipe method, so we can change actions together. So we are going to pipe that with a map operator. So this map operator, what's going to return is going to have the game document. So this is what's coming from Firebase. And here we are going to manipulate that game document so it looks something similar of what we already have. So what's the thing that we already have? So the game subject, what's returning is this object that has a board, pending promotion, it has a turn, and it has a result. So that's what we are going to pipe to transform our game into something that we can read. And we first need to access the data of the document, because by default we don't have the data, and we can say just game equals game doc.data. And now we have the data. I'm going to deconstruct the data from the game, and what I'm going to take from here is the pending promotion, and also something that's going to be called game data. So what is the game data? What's going to be the game data is just going to be the thing that we store in the local storage. It's going to be this chess.fen. So it's like this really long code that we have that represents the current game. That's going to be the game data. We don't need to invoke that method here, because we are going to update the game in Firebase with that game data. And then we have the rest of the game. So this, I'm just spreading the rest of the properties of this object into a different variable. Then I'm going to find the current member, so the ones that's present in the ones that's assigned here. So I'm going to say let member, and I adding that here because I want to use this member in other functions here, so that's why I adding that globally. And here I'm going to assign that member, so I can just search for the members array and find the one that has my UID, which has to be equal of the current user that UID. So that's going to be the member. Now I also want to declare the opponent, and the opponent is just going to be the opposite. So in this case, it does not have to be equal to the current user. It has to be different to the current user UID. So I have declared that, and now if we have game data, we are going to load that data into the board. So if we do have this data, we're going to load it. And that's not going to be the case for the first time, so that's okay. And here we can just load the game data. So here we are just doing what we do here, but instead of loading the data from the local storage, we're loading the data from the firebase document. Okay, so now we can just also invoke this is game over boolean that we can have from the chess that game over. So this will return if the game is over, and now we can just return something similar to this object. We are just going to return that. So first we need the board, and we can just say chess.board. Then we need the pending promotion, and we just going to pass that pending promotion. Then we are going to have the is game over, and that's that we have here. Then I'm going to change the name of this variable, this turn, because it's not going to be right now, it's not going to be the turn, it's going to be more like the position of the user, because we use turn in a way that we can flip the board, but that's not going to be the case anymore. So I'm going to change the name of this. It's not going to be called turn anymore, it's going to be called position. So for that I'm going to search globally in the IDE so I can change that. Alright, so I can change that everywhere. Here we have some things that reference. For changing that in VS Code without needing to search and replace, I can just click F2 and this will rename this to a different thing. So I'm going to rename this to position, and you can see that every name that has that here changed. And well, it didn't actually like rename everything, so just change the name of this property, but because I'm going to rename everything, I'm just going to remove this and call this position. Let me save this. Okay, be sure that everything is okay, and we need to change this in other places. So here is not going to be called turn, it's going, and again with F2 in VS Code you just can rename this like this position, and here also with F2 set position, and we change that. And right here we need to change this. Instead of being turn, it's going to be position, the thing that we passed to the board. Here is not going to be the game that turn that we set here, is going to be the game that position. One more thing here is that React is complaining because we are not listening to the dependency ID right here, so I'm just going to add that here, ID. And we changed everything that was using turn instead to position, and we need to change this here also to position. Here we are not going to change that because that's coming from the chess library, so we don't need to change that. And we change that there, and here I'm just going to say position. And what's going to be the position? Well, it's not going to come from chess, it's going to be the piece that the member has. So that's why we wanted to change it, because now it's going to be the piece that the member has in this case, because we don't want to flip everything all the time. Then I'm going to also pass the member. I'm also going to pass the opponent, and I need to pass the result, and the result is going to work the same if the game is over. So we're going to get game result is the function that we already have, and if it's not over, we're just going to have this new object. Then we can just spread the rest of game. So in case we need more properties, we are going to spread the rest of the game. So right here is complaining about something. Opponent is not defined. It's because I misspelled. It's not like this. It's like this. Okay, so now it should be fine. So what this is doing is just listening to the real-time changes that we have in Firebase, and every time we have a change, we are just mapping the data and in the way we want it to be, to match what we have in the application. And that's all that we need to take care for the first time the game. One more thing that I want to add here is that if the game is not coming from Firebase, I want to set back the game ref globally to null, so we clear that out in case we have to we're playing two things at the same time, locally and online. So that's why I'm setting this back to null, and let's see how many errors we have. Well, we don't have any errors because we haven't triggered this already. Well, before starting, I'm going to actually fix something that's going to fail here. And what's going to fail is that in our game app, as you can see, we are using an async function right here, and we need to await that into right here to be able to actually continue with these things. So what I'm going to do is you can't have an async function in a use effect. You can't do it because it is something with React, the way it works. You can read here to prevent race conditions. Async callbacks are not allowed, but you can declare an async function inside the use effect like this. So this is exactly what we are going to do. We are going to have a function called init, and this one is going to be an async function. Let me remove this. And this is going to have this data, these things. Async, it's not like this. Async function init. And here we are going to call that function. And here this is not defined, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to declare this like this with a let function like this, subscribe, and here I'm going to declare that like this, subscribe. All right. And well, I'm going to first check if this exists, because it might not exist, and if it does exist, we are going to unsubscribe into the return function. Now we can await this, but remember that this init game function might return something, some codes, some error codes. So let me get that. So we can say const init result equals, so we have the result, the init result right here, and we're going to store that into an state. We're going to have init result and set init result equals use state, and the initial value is going to be null. So we are going to set that init result. Let's just call this res, and we are going to set that right here. we are setting the init result, and what we are going to do with this result is just display different things to the user. We also want to have a loading state, because this will take some time to resolve this init function, and in the time we don't have anything to break. So I'm going to also add a loading phase, loading set loading, and this equals the use state, and at the beginning it's going to be true, and once this completed it's going to be false. Set loading to false, and now we can start displaying things. So if this is loading, right, if it's fetching is trying to init the function, we are going to return a string that says loading. Or if the init result is equal to not found, remember that we have that right here, not found. If nothing is found into the firebase collection, we're going to just return not found, or game not found. And if the init result equals intruder, we can just say return the game is already full, something like this. Alright, and if we don't have any of these cases, the rest is going to be undefined, so it will just continue to the application. And I think that's it so we can be able to test and see if this is working. So let's just go back here and see if it works. So now it should just open a new game. Let me try this one. It's loading, and yeah, it's open the new game. So we have the game, but the game will still not be able to, you will not be able to update that into the database, because we have to do some changes. But at the moment, let me just grab this URL, and if I open this in a new incognito tab, we should be able to enter the game as a different person. Be sure to use another browser or use the incognito mode so you can enter as a new user. So this is going to be John. We can just start, it's loading, and yeah, and now you can see that we see everything from the perspective of John, which is great. And now if I try to access this from a third user, we should have a different message, because this user will not be able to join. Firefox. Alright, so if I paste the URL here, so this is the third user. It should not allow me, because the game, yep, we had the error, but now we have another error. So game subject that subscribe is undefined. So what's happening is that it's trying to reach to this part of the code, and the game subject does not exist, of course. And what we can do right here is just check if we don't have a result, then we can just do this. So it's only in the case that we don't have any error, so the results that we have from this init, then we can make this subscription to the observable. So now it should show us the message. Yep. the game is already full. And that's correct because a third user cannot join. If we change this, it should say that the game is not found, and that's because this ID does not exist. Great. I can close that now. Okay. So let's continue with moving the pieces. So for that, we are going to make some changes here. And let's start from the top. So for the result game, we're going to take that later. And for the handle move, we are going to change some things here. And what we are going to change is that we are not going to get the promotion like this, because this will not be a valid method if the subject comes from Firebase. This will not be a valid method. So what we are going to do is we're just going to say let pending promotion, and if this is true, then the pending promotion is going to equal what we have here, from, to, and the color. And right here we are going to update the game. Yeah, that's the only thing that we're going to do here. So we are reading this from what we are assigning here. Instead of getting the value from the object, we are just storing this right here so we can read the promotion here. That's the only thing that we have for the handle move function. Then we need, I think we need to update the move function. And what we need to update here is that we don't want the other user to be able to move the pieces from the other user. So if you're white, we don't want the white user to move the pieces from the other player. How we have it here, that's possible, so we want to prevent that. And we still going to have this, and what we are going to check now is if the game ref exists. So this will only be true when we have a game from Firebase. We are going to do something and otherwise, if it doesn't exist, we are going to do what we are currently doing. And what's going to happen if the game ref exists? So we want to check if the member that piece is equal to the chess that turn. If this is true, only then the user can move. And this will only be true when the user has the turn, so they cannot move the black pieces or the white pieces if they're not there. So we're just going to do the same, legal move, and we are also going, if the move is legal, we are just going to update the game just like we have before. Now we need to change this update game function. It's going to work a little bit different, and it's the same right here. So if we have a game reference, if we do have a game reference, we are going to have updated data for the game, and it's going to have let me just finish have this else clause, and the else clause is going to be what we have here. What we have before is just going to do the thing that we were doing before. But if we have a game from Firebase, we're going to have, remember, the game data object, so, string, so that's what we are going to have now, the game data. And what's going to be the game data is going to be this, the chess.fen method that returns the chessboard into a string, and we're going to store that into into Firebase. We're going to take the pending promotion also. It's going to be the pending promotion, or if we don't have that, it's going to be null because we want to erase that. If we don't do it like this, it will not erase what we currently have. And now we are going to wait for the game to update the game. So we're going to take the game reference and we are going to use again the update method, and we are just going to use the updated data. So this is throwing an error because this is not an async function right now, so I'm going to make it an async function. So that's how it looks now. And let me just save it. And well, in this case, you can see if it's a game that's not offline, we're just calling the next function for the observable. And here, this update works as the next function because it's updating the game into in the Firestore, and Firestore is triggering this observable to be called again, so we can return another object so we can read it. Yeah, and well, we need to handle another thing, is that now we made this updated game, we made it asynchronous, so we need to await for that function where we are using it. Well, in not all the places, depends of what we are doing. Actually, I think we are okay because we are not, let me check, we are not doing other things after this is being called, so we are okay, we don't need to await for that. Yep, we don't need to update at the moment. So we can now just test and see if this whole thing is working. And now I should be able to move. It should update the Firebase object. Let me check. With the game data, we have the game data, and this should be reflected in the other board with this, that's happening. So that's great. If we move, we now should be, yep, we can see that it's being updated in real time, and that's also changing here. Okay, that's great. So that's working. Now we're just going to add some details but most of the things are done for the game. What are the details that we want to add is, well, let me just go here. If you start a new game, you should be able to share the game, right, to another person, and well, it's not clear to the user that they have to copy this. So we are going to add a model, kind of where those here where they can copy. So right here we are going to have a div with a class of notification, and it's going to be a link, and with the class of share game. Share game is a custom class that we are going to have. And here we have a strong tag that says share this game to continue. Let's add some spaces, and here I'm going to have a field with has add-ons class, and this is from Bulma. Here we have a control class with is expander, and here we have an input text with the class of input, and this input is going to be read only, so the user cannot modify the input. Here we have another control class, and here we have a button with the class of button is info that says copy. Let's say save and see what's the mess that we just created. Yep, we need to set this with an absolute position, and we can do that with this share game class. Let's go to the app.css, and here I'm going to add that class. So how it's going to look like? It's going to have a position of absolute, a width of 500 pixels. It's going to have a bottom of 0, so it goes to the bottom, and a left also of 0. If we look back, we can see that now is here, but this should be right here, so let me check. Control field, this is field. Now it should be, yep, now it's in only one line. Alright, so now we need to actually display something in the input, and the value is going to be a constant called shareable link. We don't have this declared yet, so let's do that as a constant. And this is going to be just the window that location that href, and this is going just to be the current URL, right? So you can see that it's just the current URL. We don't have the URL here. Yep. It's just the current URL, and that's what we need. In case we have a custom domain, this will be replaced with that. And if you want to play this with games, you would need a real URL. You could deploy this to Netlify without any cost and with a custom URL, so it shouldn't be a problem. But right now everything is in localhost. What we need now is we actually need to make this work. This copy button, it doesn't do anything, so I'm going to add a handler here on click, and this is going to be copy to clipboard. It's another function that we don't have, so let's create the function. Function copy to clipboard, and what this is going to do is just going to, well, it's going to be an async function, async, and it's going to wait for navigator that clipboard that write text. This is an API that we have from the browser that we can use to copy to the clipboard, and the text is going to be the shareable link. Alright, and now what I'm going to do is also have another state for the status set status, and this is going to be the status of the game, and the default is going to be waiting, or well, the default can be an empty string. we're going to set that status from the game objects, game.status. And why we are doing this is because we don't want to display this all the time, right? If the game already has participants, we don't need to display this. So that's what we're going to do. We are just going to have an if statement here, I think over here. And what it's going to say is going to be what it's going to be if the status equals waiting, then we display this. Only when status is waiting, we display this toast. And now it's not present, but it should be present in this game because this is another game that just been created, so it's present here. I want to reset the game completely. So in the case that we have a game from Firebase, we have a reset game function, and this is going to behave differently depending on what we have. So let me first change this reset function. Alright, so if the game ref is present, if we have a game from Firebase, we're going to, and right now we're going to wait to the update game object, and this also needs to be asynchronous. We're going to update the object. We don't have a promotion, but we're going to pass another variable that's going to be true, and this is going to send something special. This is incorrect. This should be like this: export async function. This is going to be true, and it's going to reset the game also in Firebase. And what we are going to do after that is we're going to reset our board with chess.reset. Else, if the game is local, we're just going to do what we did before, what we had before. And because we're passing this true property here, we are going to add this here that says reset. And what we are now going to do with that information is that if we have the reset parameter as true, we are going to change the updated data, that status, to over. So we're going to have another property, change the status to over, so we know also in the database that the game is over. So we have now that, but we also need to await where we are using the reset function. So if we go back here, we can see that we are doing that when the game is over. And what we are going to do, I'm just going to do it right here, is I'm going to await for the reset of the game. And this also needs to be an async function. And after that, I'm going to change the navigation to the home. So that's what I'm going to do. And for that, I can use the use history. And I can just say const history equals use history. And here I can just push history to home. So that should take care of that. And now the final thing is that I want to display the names of the users. and I'm going to do this right here in the port container. So I'm going to use a span that with tag class and with the is link tag link, and here we're going to have the game where, well, I'm going to set everything in a game of everything else that does not need to be displayed dynamically, or I'm going to use another state that's going to have going to call game, and this is going to be set game. The default value is an empty object, and this is going to be set game equals, well, we just passed the game object right here, and now I can read from that game here and display the game. That opponent, that name is what is going to be at the top. So if we see here, we can see that we cannot read property name of undefined. Let me add this for the current game, that member, so this shouldn't be undefined. Member. I think we first need to check if this exists. So let me see. If game.member and game.member name, and so only if this is true, we're going to display this. Now, yep, now it works. I'm going to do the same for the other user. This right here, I'm going to paste that here, but this is not for the member, it's for the opponent. Opponent and opponent.name. So now, well, this game does not have an opponent, but this one it does, so it's working. Yeah, so that's pretty much it, I think. Let's test if it works. I'm going to share this game. I'm going to open a new incognito tab. I'm going to enter my name. I'm going to start the game, so let's just play like this. Oops. So I think we have a bug. Oh, I think I know what's the issue here. So the piece is being R, but it shouldn't be R. Where is that? It should not be R, it should be either. So if I play this without using the random, it should work. Then we can fix the random thing. Okay, so now I can just play. Yep. Okay, let's test the end game, the finish game, and then we can just see what's the problem with the random thing. Okay, so if I just play like this, playing like this, and then I can just play it like this. Let me go back. I will just do this, and then I'm playing something like this. Yeah, so now the game is over, and if I click here, it will just take me to the home. Yep. And if I start again, we should have a fresh game. Yep, that's working. And I think I know what's happening here. if we go back to the app, to the home, we can see that here we are checking for random. So this shouldn't be random, it should be R. That's the issue. If the starting piece is R, then we are going to have this random function. So now if I start again and I play with random pieces and I play, my current piece should be white. Yeah, it's white, so it should just work. Let me see. So just paste this right here, and now we can just play. So that's it. Alright, so thank you so much for sticking to the end. I know it was a long video, but I hope you learned something new today. Well, this is not like a production ready application. It actually has a lot of flaws, and that's mainly because all of the checks are happening in the front end. If you want something really robust, you know, like people are not cheating or something like that, you might have need to have like a server that check for a bunch of things and also more secure rules. But that's not the objective of this video. Is just to give you an overview on how you can make these things work. And well, if you like the content, please subscribe to the channel, and well, thank you so much for watching.